Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another podcast. My name is Chris Collier. I'm your host of Conquer with Chris, the podcast you don't want to miss. Today I have a wonderful guest. I have Jessica Dawn Russell with me. Good afternoon, Jessica.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. Jessica, tell a little bit to the people about where you're at, what you do.
Okay, well, I've actually come a very long way. I'm a serial entrepreneur. You can't really see me, but I look really, really young for my age, and I always put this out there because I'm in my early 50s. So I like when I'm explaining my background to kind of put a time onto the face. And so I actually started off, I went to college. I have a bachelor's in international business, and I ended up getting involved in my mother's profession, which was the real estate industry. So I've been involved in different facets of that industry. And I live in Los Angeles, California, in the Beverly Hills area. And I was very, very young when I started in that business. And there was really a handful of people in the industry in Los Angeles. And my mother had her own office and her own companies, but I didn't want to work with her necessarily. I wanted to kind of do my own little thing. And so I ended up working with your traditional real estate sales companies. And then shortly I ended up getting involved with starting my own consulting company. And I started doing other things, and I became very successful in real estate. I'm obviously in Los Angeles, so the prices are high. And at the time, because, at 50, looking young, when I was in my early 20s, I looked like I was still in my teens, and certain markets were accepting me with selling their homes that were almost $1 million. And so at that time, that was a lot of money. But today, that buys you a bedroom, So I made a lot of money. And I've always been an entrepreneur. And I was in positions where sometimes I didn't think, I just jumped in and did it. And I took chances, and I got involved with different businesses. So to kind of not make it a long story, I actually owned a successful talent management company in Hollywood for many years. And then I sold out. I ended up producing some movies, getting in with movie financing. I was in business consulting for a couple of decades. That kind of spanned me to the knowledge of doing the coaching that I do. And I got involved with a lot of other businesses, joint ventures, financing, and still real estate involved. And then what happened is I started coming to a realization, unfortunately, about 18 years ago, things started to change for me. I was getting not burned out, but I was frustrated with my environment. I wasn't happy. I at that time, generation wise, it was very different to be a female in business. You still had to deal with the hard knocks. It seemed like every place I was going, I was just really struggling. And I already did a lot career wise, but it was that male female dichotomy, and just everything that I was trying to do, I was just struggling. And I ended up looking back, and I'm saying to myself, I have to slow down a little bit because nothing was working. I was getting angry, and I just didn't want to be where I was living anymore in Los Angeles. And I started to think of doing some changing. And this is where I started to get involved with what they call NLP and a little bit more of reflective work and self-improvement or self-help. And I started becoming more involved with this and implementing it in with my businesses. It was more of a self-search type of situation that kind of branched in with my business life. And
real quick, Jessica, if I could, for those people who are just watching and may not know what NLP is, could you tell them what it is and kind of how you use it?
Sure. Actually, it's becoming extremely well known. It used to be the upper business or corporate type of training that people used to understand other people's emotions or how to strategize and negotiate. How most people are familiar with it is this NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming. Neuro-linguistic programming is neuro, which is obviously hearing and in the brain, and linguistic is language. And programming is a little bit of off, but it basically has to do with how we communicate and how others perceive with our communication and vice versa. So not many people were really familiar with that unless they were more in a more, higher affluent environment in business. It was extremely expensive to learn. And most people, especially today or for generations back, if they were into self-help, is through Anthony Robbins. He's now very vocal and open about what his modality is, which is neuro-linguistic programming. And you can use it for obviously business, but you can also use it on a personal level as well. And it's very different from some of the things like, people will believe in the law of intention. It does have a little bit to do with that, but it's very strong on communication. But communication has to do with your DNA and also what you teach yourself. And so it's very involved if you're going to look into it as training, but it's something that's really fascinating once you start to really learn what it is.
Wow. So I want to go back for a minute though, just because this is when we're recording this is Women's Appreciation Month.
Yes. Women's Day
why.
Today.
Huh?
Today is Women's Day.
It is, but I don't understand why that's not almost every day, because without women, we'd be in a world of hurt. But I want to look back. Let's talk about your career for a minute, because you say it was a couple decades ago when you got started. I want to talk about that thing you had to go through, because I'm sure there were a lot of people against, even in the progressive area of California. I'm sure you were one of the first people to walk through some of those doors, whether it be in real estate or business, even in California. Because I was just thinking about how we are today and how open it is for a woman. But I want to talk about how you kind of helped pioneer that, because you said there were some situations, and I want to talk about that, because guess what? There might be someone who might not deal with it as a woman. They might deal with it because their race or creed or whatever. I want to address that and guess what? Sometimes it's just because you came from a certain family, right?
Right.
Or you just don't have the money. People look at you because you don't have the money that they have. So when you had to overcome those obstacles, how did you get yourself in the right mindset, even before NLP, but even using NLP? How do you do that? How do you talk yourself, psych yourself out? How do you ever do that?
Well, it's actually not even about NLP, and I'll tell you, I still go through it today. And not that I look at myself as a victim, but I've had to overcome all of that and try to figure out, not or blame or shame myself. But, unfortunately, because of where I live in Hollywood. There's so many beautiful people. Everything is based on how you look or what you have or what you can do for somebody. And because I was always involved in male dominant businesses, or we'll just say businesses where the men are usually the ones who had the money. Women were working, or they were professionals in those areas of business, but it was always the men who had the money. So, truthfully, it doesn't matter where you choose around the United States, women started acquiring money probably about 20 years ago. And, I believe that it started through divorce, where they were able to get some money from the divorce of their husband. And then, of course, women today are self-made, and there's a lot of successful, financially worthy women that are high net worth individuals, but it wasn't the case then. And so I was always working in male dominant businesses. And I will tell you really fast, it started with my own mother, because my mother divorced my father when I was young, and I was raised as my mother's daughter. And so I learned a lot of skills from her, because she actually was in real estate. And in her generation, it was something that to be a divorced woman was not really proper and not well received. And then to be a businesswoman was a little bit different, and a lot of people could not really understand that or how to work with women in business. And so I grew up basically going with my mother to a lot of her meetings, because she didn't have babysitters and all of that. And I would go to restaurants. And so I learned how to wine and dine early, and I would sit in the booth with them, or maybe the booth behind them, and I would listen to my mother do her business. So that actually was very instrumental for me. And I know a lot of people didn't have that luck, or, have that ability. But later on, what happened is when I was truthfully on my own, I was really working with a lot of influential and powerful men, a lot of men who actually had money. And I always say, it's a woman who's living in a man's world, but you still have to know how to play it. And so I know that even where you live in, Atlanta, it's a little bit similar, like in the larger towns, and definitely in small towns, when there's a woman who's trying to do business or be professional, it's a little bit different, because, we have an old-fashioned mind. But I still love men. Not all men think this way. And today, we're, especially with younger generations, more progressive, and we're in that shift, and things have become a lot better. But unfortunately, it's a big part of where I live and what the expectations are. And so you have to learn along the way. Even though a lot of these things definitely at that time were really, really hurting me emotionally. And it was something that was really hurting me to the point where a lot of things that I did, I wasn't felt rewarded. And my age and maybe the way that I look was hindering me rather than helping me. Because I do say, anybody can get their foot into the door, but you have to be able to keep yourself there. And so as I got older, obviously things started to become easier, because I realized what I was doing, and I've been there and I've done that. And I learned the rules, and I understood how to do business. I think today with a lot of women, especially women that are actually going into the new workplace and, trying to take advantage of what just happened with all of us that we're still going through and starting new, is that they really just have to take a chance. I know that we're in a crazy time right now, and a lot of people are going through, cancel culture, or, we're accusatory on just so many different things based on judgmental. There's also a very, very large part of all of us all throughout the world, not just the United States, that is very forgiving. And we're coming to this point right now where I think that there's a lot of compassion that goes along. And, now I'm also in my 50s, so needless to say, but this is really where I think in some states more than others, but they're closely behind, people have learned over the last few decades to understand how to work with women and look at them a little bit more equal. So we can't always fall back onto, well, I'm a woman and, they only want one thing and this and that. But there's been, as you know, generations before me that have had to deal with a lot worse. And some people have a different skin, and it's really how you play it. But becoming an entrepreneur and not having to work for anybody, or being involved with other women and taking them on my wing has been very rewarding, because I've actually have been the kind of person, regardless of who's working for me, someone who usually takes people under their wings, and I try to give them shortcuts. And you have to kind of really take a strong look of yourself, and you have to kind of understand, without being accusatory on yourself, why these patterns continue to happen. And is it something that I need to change, or is it something in my work culture that needs to change, that I can help change that? Because a lot of times, we're talking earlier about NLP, but a lot of times it has to do with lack of communication and understanding. And I think regardless of who we're talking about, understanding changes a lot. It's about educating a person or making them understand. And to be a woman is a different kind of animal, because unfortunately, and it was interesting, I was talking to somebody about this earlier, we're our worst enemy. We don't always or usually at all fit into the boys club, but at the same token, a lot of women are not team players, and we don't bond and have that closeness with each other as a race or as a gender. And so we're kind of left alone out there doing our own little thing. And so when you want that camaraderie, it's not always there. And I think a lot of the younger generations have it down better than us old timers, because they don't see race or gender or age. They are learning how to communicate in their own little way, which that's another story. But they're starting to be able to communicate and involve each other, whether they're male or female. And so we missed out on that, but we've had to teach. And sometimes the way that we've taught, especially the men, is through anger or, to be, really mean and nasty, to try to get them out of our frustration, to understand that even though we're living in the man's world, if we still have to take care of the children and pay rent and everything else that the man does, we have to be able to work and have a profession effectively. And so, I haven't been able to master that because everybody is different. But
I will say this about what I've
to.
heard about your story is, and this is something I say to people all the time, because I deal with a lot outside of business. I'm also a pastor. I also do several things. So, and I'm in an interracial relationship. My wife and I have different backgrounds. I want to say this is, too often I see people who've been through something hard become a victim. And you can never be the victor if you are the victim. And as long as you have that mentality, you talk about dealing with thoughts and processes. If you have that mentality, I'm the victim, you can never overcome. You can never win, because you've already been overcome yourself. So
exactly. Well, that's what I was mentioning earlier. I was starting to become angry, and I was starting to be really a mean person. I didn't like the way that I was. And that is exactly, I believe, what was happening, because it was like I was on a constant hamster wheel, and it was just like negativity and negativity. Everything bad was happening to me. The more it would happen, I would get really upset. So there was no productivity in my life, or in my business life. I had to step off. And I agree with you.
So for the person who's maybe they're just starting out, doesn't matter what age they are, if they're 20 or 50, if they're just starting out, what advice or what key points could you point them to get started? Whether it be online, offline, doesn't matter. Mentality wise, what would you suggest they do?
Okay. So if somebody is really young, or even if they are starting something new, and let's just say if someone's worked at a job 9 to 5, and unfortunately they've lost their profession or the industry that they were in, I would say take a step back and take a deep breath and just really smile, because I believe that this is the perfect time. Even though it seems like the wrong time or a negative time, because things may seem a little bit harder, it's really not, because it's times like this where productivity and good ideas flourish. And I would not be afraid, because you have to face your fears. And if you have a lot of people that are listening to your podcast that are spiritual, as in the God sense, that's one person's spirituality. But I do believe that for other people who have different beliefs, it's important to have some spirituality, because this will be your close friend, And this will be your guide when you need somebody or something, and you may not feel that it's there to keep moving forward. We're in a shift right now. And so I think what I was saying earlier is a lot of people, without even judging whether someone was richer or poorer on a higher business level or not, we're more on an equal playing field because we were forced to reinvent or change things. And so I really believe, and I say this a lot, and it's kind of my thing, just jump into the deep end. Just really don't worry about your fears. Just jump into the deep end, because you know what? There's a small percentage of people that are going to drown. If you jump into the deep end, you will instantly learn how to swim. And you'll at least learn how to swim if you're overwhelmed to get to the shallow. But if you start at the shallow of the pool, you may prevent yourself from going further towards that deep end. And the deep end is more enriching, believe me.
That's wonderful, wonderful. So is that your quote you want to share? Just jump in.
Jump in the deep end. Yeah, I'm pretty popular with that statement. I think that's what I've done, and I've been very grateful, whether it was being naive or gullible, or doing it because I've been there and done that, and I can take a chance on myself and just do it. That's really what I think today people should do, is just go for it and don't be afraid, and just jump in and see what happens.
Well, I want to address that for a minute, because that's a good point, right? You're going to have fear either way, right? Fear is almost ever present, right? I just believe you should punch fear in the face and go for it. I had a friend who was in the military, and he had to jump out of airplanes, and he said every time he got up, he said, I don't know why I'm jumping out of this perfectly good plane. He said, as long as I'm jumping out of this plane and you're here, fear, I'm going to take you with me when I jump out of the plane. And so I want to talk to the person who never bet on themselves. This is the time to go all in. Take all your chips, push them in on yourself, right?
Yeah.
Because there's not going to be another time like this in our lifetime, at least. So go on yourself. So what are you up to now, Jessica?
Okay, so I love education. So along the way, I picked up a few accreditations, certifications, and titles here and there. One of them is in the mental health and holistic area. I'm in California. I'm one of the highest hypnotherapists, and I work with functional and integrative health. And I've obviously done decades of coaching and working with people directly with groups and all of that. So blah, 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 blah. But
no, you're doing well.
I push myself because I like to stay busy. But I think what happened to me, because if I told you that when I was in high school, I didn't really see myself having a career. I didn't see that canvas anywhere. I wanted to get married to my boyfriend from high school, have 2.5 kids and a dog, maybe, do some retail or something. So it kept me busy, and happily have dinner on the table. So when everyone got home, we could be a family. Well, that's a really beautiful picture. Now remember, because I still idolize the 1950s Ozzie and Harriet Nelson days, right?
Leave it to be.
Isn't it great? But it's not usually like that. And I don't know what happened. I ended up going to college, and I went to college actually out of the country. I started getting involved and seeing what's out there and meeting people from different cultures. And then when I came back, I started to really feel inspired of having a career and a profession. And so, boy, did I. I owned a couple of entertainment companies, produced movies, had the management company, real estate, all of this stuff. But there's a part of all of this is that sometimes when you try to do too much, you actually accomplish nothing. So I would pick something to start on, and then develop your mind to be a little bit more on an entrepreneurialistic side, because some people are a little bit more single dimensional, and it doesn't mean you can't see in different directions and get involved with different things. I will tell you, recently in the last year and a half, there are more people, especially the people who doubt themselves. And this is going back to what you were bringing up earlier. They have no idea what they have learned in the last year to year and a half. They have learned so many entrepreneur skills. They've learned more about themselves. They have a better mindset. They have more leadership qualities than they probably ever dreamed of or knew that they can have. Because what a lot of people have done is they either went through feast or famine, or if they are working from home, they ended up learning how to be their own business person. And so if you're listening and you are in that situation, but you didn't realize you became your own business person, it's not that I want you to quit your job tomorrow, because you need some financial security to ride yourself over this wave. But you also have time and you have more knowledge now for you to have a side gig, as we say, and try to live your hopes and your dreams, because you have done so much lately. And what you've actually done is you've been running your boss's company. You've been delegating your job description and building more and more into that. And you've been what they call a self-starter. So I feel that the people who always felt they wanted to start something that maybe didn't have the confidence to do that, do it now, because you know enough. And on top of that, there are so many people, without even saying, that have been displaced, but we all want to move forward. And most people want to help others succeed. And it's not shameful anymore to say to anyone, even if they are highly sophisticated in what you're trying to learn, to say to them, I'm not that experienced, but I would love to be able to work with you, do something to accommodate your business. I'm just starting out. I'm telling you that most people will help you because they want to be successful. And right now, people are looking into each other's souls a lot stronger than they ever had, because we need that nourishment and we need closeness to people. And that is why I really feel that right now, since it's also a little bit slower in our world, it's the best time to jump into the deep end, and you will swim. And you know what? You know, like if you can make a few pedals, even if you go into a little bit more shallow, you can always now feel comfortable to turn around when you're ready and go back again into that deep end. So I would just do it.
So Jessica, how can people find you? If like something you said resonates with them, how and where can they find you?
Well, I'm in social media. They can find me through you. I'm also on Facebook, and I have a podcast called The Jessica Dawn Russell Show. And I can give them the email address if you like, or you
Sure.
can provide it to them.
That's fine.
I'm not hard to find.
Just search her. I think she'll pop right up. Jessica Dawn Russell. Sorry. Jessica Dawn Russell. Right?
Right.
Well, is there anything?
I'll be there in the deep end with them.
Jumpinthedeepend.com, right?
Yeah. Hey, is it taken? We should get it. I'll split it with you. We'll be partners.
Sure. You want, in closing, to leave with the people?
Whatever your beliefs are, right now is the only chance, because we're in the present moment, to live your hopes and dreams. And even though things seem as if it's a little bit difficult, is it really? because fortunately, most of the things that have kept us back are in the past, but it's only you that brings them to the present.
Mm.
So go to the future. Live the life that you always wanted to live because it's there for you. Just have to go out and get it.
Wow. Today, my guest has been Jessica Dawn Russell. Thank you so much for being on. And please like, share, subscribe. If you really like what you said, please leave comments. If you're on YouTube, hit that notification bell so you can get our freshest content. Thank you so much. Have a great day.